morning, dear colleagues. Good morning, dear colleagues. Today we have a lecture. Now I wait some times. I think today be at least near the more than 13, maybe more than 25 person on our lecture because now attendance not so good. Так, now I have not access to the chat. Now I try receive access. Now I visit chat. I have no chat. Icha, I know we have Icha. Oh, 30 students. Okay, dear colleagues, I ask you, answer me please. Now, each are present or absent, quality of sound enough because and if possible, answer me in the contact because I cannot open chat. When I open YouTube, you will listen my each because sound will come back. Так, да. I have not access to the YouTube. I have not access to the YouTube chat. I don't understand why, but I have not access to YouTube chat. Так, chat absent, dear colleagues. Chat absent. Answer me please in our chat room in the contact, okay? Quality of sound for me very interesting. Good morning, dear colleagues. Good morning, dear colleagues. Today we have a lecture. Now I wait some time. Так, sound very good. Now we start our lecture. Now I switch on my mic and we start our lecture. Okay, now I check how many students present. I don't know how many students. Okay, 25, not so many, but somebody present. Okay, let's go. 27 students. Так, communications via contact. I don't understand why. Attendance put here. Так, okay. Today we will discuss about psychopathology and mental state examinations. My opinion, it's been not one lecture, it's been at least 1 or 2 lecture, and we split our materials to the sum part. Okay, we split our materials to the sum part. Today it's be enter in the psychopathology and mental state examinations. After that we will discuss about now I switch off my sound because I switch my sound. I hope once more, picture quality of picture, no problems with quality. Okay, very good. No problems with quality of picture. Now just a moment, I come back. Okay, I am here. Now I check quality of picture in my screen. Quality of picture, my opinion, very good, and we start our lecture. Okay, I am Professor Alexander Dvirsky. Today our topic, psychopathology and mental state examinations. I want to start my discussions from general questions. For what purpose we need a nerve systems? What do nerve systems? In general, nerve systems, it's organs. It's organs like hands, it's organs like stomach, it's organ like livers, yes? Every organ has an organ target and organ aims. What's the main target and aims of the nerve systems? What do nerve systems? My opinion, we must come back to the materials in psychology. What does mean psychology? Psychology is a science about behavior and mental process. Main target and aims of psychology. Prognosis, modifications of the human behavior. Okay, now you understand. Then main things in our life, it's a behavior. Why behavior very important? Behavior very important because behavior is objective. Dear colleagues, now we discuss some minutes about what does it mean objective and subjective in psychology. Yes, of course, psychiatry, in my opinion, it's a part of psychology. Because psychology is a large science about human behavior and mental process. Psychiatry, it's a part of psychology, it's a part of medicine, which overlapping between psychology and medicine. And yes, of course, main target of psychiatry, it's a modification of the human behavior, which developing due some problems. And yes, of course, very important understand what does it mean pathology in behavior. But what does it mean behavior? Behavior, it's objective. Everything which we can register due our sense organs, everything which we can register via special device and after that register via our sense organs, it's a behavior. Behavior, everything which we can register in our body. And every day for frontiers of the behavior increasing. Why? Because every day we receive new device which can do a lot of things, which can register a lot of things like functions MRI, functions PET, positive emissions tomography, a lot of device which register eyes movement, a lot of device which resist heart rate. Yes, of course, I hope you understand. We can register heart rate and ask patients about something. Behavior changings. But what's behavior I mean? I mean behavior change of the heart rate. I mean behavior change of the picture in the electrocardiography. Yes, of course, we can use electroencephalography and register some electricity activity of the brain. And yes, of course, this activity, it's a behavior. If we register something, it's a behavior. I hope you understand this phenomena, yes? If we register something, it's an objective. If objective, it's a behavior. And next questions. What does it mean, mental process? Mental process, it's an activity of nerve systems which depend our behavior. But mental process, objective of only for person which has this process. Other words, mental process objective for myself, and my mental process objective for you. For example, now you can register my behavior like face expressions, like a style of language. You can register my affect, but you don't know my mood. You don't know what I think about you. You can register only my behavior. For you, my behavior is objective. For you, my internal words, like what I think about lecture, what I think about you, it's a subjective, because you can recognize my internal process only via looking glass of my behavior. But my behavior and my internal words, it's absolutely different things. For example, I am very pleasure with students. I am very positive with students. But you don't know what's my opinion about students in my mind. Yeah, you cannot read my idea. Same situations with your colleagues. You don't know what your friends or your colleagues think about you. You can ask what you think about me, and you're receiving answer. For example, you're very good, you are best, but it's only words. It's a behavior. But for you, important behavior, because inside mind, friends or colleagues which answer you very good, it's maybe false. It's maybe not so true, because yes, of course, we every time adaptate our behavior. We adaptate our behavior, and yes, of course, like etiquette, like social behavior. If somebody asks what you think about me in the office, yes, of course, I answer you very good, no problems. If our level same. If I am a boss, maybe my answer, I create a list of problems which has this person. But it's depend. You don't know really what you think, what boss think about you. Maybe boss try stimulate your activity and every time push you, but inside mind he think it's this guys or this lady very good, but I something push she or he, and maybe activity increasing. Okay, now small conclusions. Psychology, it's a science about behavior and mental process. Behavior, it's absolutely objective things. Everything which we can register due our sense organs or special device, it's a behavior. It's maybe some chemical parameter for our body, maybe electricity parameter of our body. Everything which we can register, it's a behavior. Next, mental process. Mental process, it's an activity of the brain which create behavior. Our mental process is very deep and very difficult. but mental process objective only for person which has this mental process. For you, your mental process, it's objective. For me, your mental process subjective. For you, for me, your behavior objective, but your mental process subjective. Okay, for what purpose we have nerve systems? We have nerve systems because nerve systems create adaptive way of behavior. Our target is a surviving in the environment. Our target is a surviving, clear. For ourselves, very important surviving into environment. For ourselves, very important surviving, and we feel positive emotions when we resolve tasks, clear. When we resolve tasks, we feel positive emotions. Okay, what's target and aims of nerve systems? Now we have nerve systems because nerve systems create adaptive way of behavior. What does mean adaptive way of behavior? Adaptive way of the behavior is resolving problems. It's a create behavior. What does mean behavior? Behavior, it's energy. It's an energy which spend our body in environment. In behavior, we modify word around ourselves. In behavior, we modify a word inside ourselves, around ourselves. Our behavior, it's a physical energy, clear. We use energy and we modify word, we modify surrounding, we modify our internal environment. It's a behavior, clear, it's a behavior. And very important, our behavior must be compatibility with environment. Because environment, it's not so friendly. It's not so friendly things. Our environment every time take some task for ourselves, and we every time must survive. Clear? We every time must survive. We must resolve problems with water. We must resolve problems with foods. We must resolve problems with other things like I don't know, like a virus, like a temperature, like a rain, like a snow. We every time resolve problems, clear. And our life, it's everyday surviving. Our life, it's everyday surviving. Okay, and what do our nerve systems? Our nerve systems create strategy and tactic how to resolve special situations. Our nerve systems create a strategy how to survive in the long time. Our nerve systems use former experience and things and experience and skills and apply apply from experience and skills to the current situations. We need the things for like a user, like use our intelligence ability, we use our memory, we use our emotions, but we have one target, adaptive way of the behavior. And what does mean psychopathology? What does mean pathology from this point of view? Pathology from this point of view, it's an incompatibility between situations and behavior. Clear? What does mean mental diseases? Mental diseases, it's a situations when behavior incompatibility with environment majority time during the day. Clear? It's like a stable disadaptive behavior. Psychopathology from other point of view, it's a behavior which it's a behavior which incompatibility with environment. It's a behavior which without adaptations in the surrounding. What does it mean surrounding? Surrounding or environment, it's maybe our society, it's our social relations, it's our business relations, it's our relations with weather, with nature. Clear? And what does mean psychopathology? Pathology, mental diseases destroy adaptations in the environment. But environment has a lot of dimensions. It's a multi-dimension things. Interpersonal connections in family, interpersonal connections in office, interpersonal connections in culture, in religions, a lot of connections. It's how to use our space around ourselves, like a transport, like a bank, like a, everything's. And when I speak about adaptations, I speak about adaptations in all dimensions. And what does it mean, pathology, in mental pathology or mental diseases? Mental disease, it's a diseases which broken adaptation, which destroy adaptations in all dementia or in some dementia. Clear? Maybe patients cannot live in family, patients cannot work, something like this. What very important? What's what background of our behavior? Our background of our behavior, it's a mental process. Clear? Our mental process, it's a background of our behavior. And mental process, I repeat once more, it's objective for yourself and subjection for examiner. And what does it mean, behavior? Behavior is something objective. It's something which you can register. Now you register my face expressions. Now you register my body language. And yes, of course, it's an objective. Clear? It's an absolute objective for you. But you don't know what I feel right now. What's my real emotions? Because if you ask me what I feel, I say I feel very good. I like my students. I have a very positive relation to students. I think then all students very good, and all students say so. I don't know. All students very smart. But it's only language. You don't know what's really. Maybe it's a true. Maybe it's a false. You don't know. You don't know why? Because my language, it's a behavior. But for you, important only my language. Clear? Because my language was very positive for you. Now we will discuss about a type of diseases. In psychiatry, we speak about two type of diseases. First type of diseases, it's organic diseases. What does mean organic diseases? Okay. Organic and mental diseases. Organic diseases, it's a disturbance in mental process, in behavior and mental process due general medical conditions. For example, what does mean organic disease? Patient has elevations of the thyroid hormones. If patient has elevations of the thyroid hormones, what's happy with patients? First, it's a excitations, it's a insomnia, it's a patient's very talkative. Patients has a psychomotor excitations, stand up, stand down. It's maybe irritability. And why patient has problems in behavior? And patient has a problems in behavior because we register increased level of the thyroid hormones. It's an objective, clear, and we understand. Patient has a psychomotor excitations, patient has insomnia, patient has irritability because level of the thyroid hormone increasing. It's an organic disease, clear. Expression psychological, but background it's organic. Background it's problems in hormones. As example, patient has a low level of the thyroid hormones. What's happy with patients? Patient has a psychomotor retardations. Patient has maybe negative moods. Patient has a low ability of psychological process. Patient has a low ability of the associative process, and maybe it's something decrease the cognitive activity. Yes, of course, cognitive activity may be decreased due increasing of the level of hormone, because associating process be very lability, and yes, of course, if patient has a lack of the thyroid hormones, it's influence to the mental process. Mental process be very slow, mental process be very rigidity, mental process be say so very mental process and thinking be not so correct. Yes, of course, it's in decrease. It's modify mental process. Thyroid hormone modify mental process. Thyroid hormone modify emotions area. And now you understand then organic problems in the thyroid gland influence to the mental process. It's first, it's a mood. Second, it's a motor. It's like a general activity. And third, it's emotions. Yeah, or maybe lability emotions in increasing, and negative emotions like depressions, maybe very slow lability, like slow lability of emotions in decreasing of the thyroid hormones. And yes, of course, we cannot reduce a mental process. We cannot reduce mental process. Why we cannot reduce mental process? We cannot reduce mental process because mental process, it's a hidden area, clear. It's a very privacy for everybody. It's a very privacy. But we reduce human behavior. For example, patients in seat. Patients very talkative. Patients has problems with attention. You can reduce. Patients start do something, jumping from one idea to other idea. Why it's happy? It's maybe mania, but it's maybe increasing on the thyroid hormones. And yes, of course, our first stage, it's check level of the thyroid hormones. Okay, thyroid hormones increasing, patients in seat, patients very talkative, patient has insomnia, patient has irritability. Yes, of course, it's maybe problems, disturbance in behavior due general medical conditions. What general medical conditions? It's an increased level of the thyroid hormones. Patient has a lack of activity. Patient has so difficult resolve different task. Why it's happy? Answer very easy. It's happy because patient has a lack of the thyroid hormones. Clear? Now we have a medical background, general medical conditions influence to the mental process, but we cannot reduce mental process because we have not mentaloscopy room in our hospital. Clear? In our hospital, present only rooms which like X-ray examinations, like a CT, MRI. We can do visualizations of the brain, but we cannot visualize mental process. Clear? Okay, if patient has a problems in behavior and patient has a problems in the morphology of brain in some metabolic process, we can think about influence of the general medical conditions to the mental process, and mental process modify disturbance in behavior. I hope now you understand. Organic diseases in psychiatry, it's a disorders in behavior and mental process due general medical conditions. If we recognize special medical conditions which can influence to the mental process and influence to behavior, and these connections very strong, it's organic diseases. Example of the organic diseases, it's problems in behavior and mental process due hormones, for example, due neurodegenerative disorders, for example, Alzheimer's diseases, vascular dementia, frontal temporal lobe dementia. Clear? If we understand connections between morphology, metabolic process, and mental or behavior, it's a organic diseases in psychiatry. It's a psychiatric organic disorders. I repeat once more. It's a problems in behavior and mental process due endocrine systems, due morphology of the nerve systems. Majority of the mental of the neurological diseases which touch CNS influence to the mental process and behavior. Other example, for example, progesterone. Increasing level of the progesterone developing symptoms of depressions. Clear? It's a depressions like a syndromes due increasing level of the progesterone. Progesterone, I repeat once more, it's an oral contraceptive, for example. Mental disorders. What does mean mental disorders? Mental disorders, it's like main diseases which manage a psychiatrist. I pay attention. I don't use terms treatment. We use terms management of patients. Why management? Because we use not only medications. We use psychological treatment. We use social adaptations, we use social workers, we use pills, drugs, legal drugs, yeah? Okay, what has been mental diseases? Mental diseases is a disturbance of mental process and disturbance in behavior without general medical conditions, without morphological and metabolic disturbance. It means morphological and metabolic disturbance not recognizing due clinical examinations. I paid your attention. We never think about mental diseases without clinical examinations. Our first step in the diagnostic, it's a recognize metabolic or morphological process which can developing problems in behavior or problems in mental process. You remember then if patient has a lack of the thyroid hormone from the childhood period, he has a intelligence inability, disability. Or why it's happy? It's happy because thyroid hormone influence to the mental ability, to the cognitive ability. What has been mental disorders? Mental disorders, it's problems in behavior, and patients from the general practitioner doctor has a perfect health, clear. Patient has a absolutely perfect health. MRI, CT, blood analysis, general examinations without pathology. But patient has a problems in behavior, and patient has a problems in mental process, in mentality. Yes, of course, you must understand. And when we speak about pathology in mental process, it's a very subjective. Why? Because who can recognize mental process? It's a psychiatrist which recognize disturbance in mental process via looking glass of the patient's behavior. Clear? We recognize patient's behavior, and after that we try to do connections between behavior and mental process. If you remember our classes in psychology, then psychology has a like a main target of psychology, and it's brain-mind connections. We want to understand what's connections between brain and mind. Brain, it's organs. Mind, it's activity. It's activity of the brain, and mind create our behavior. But mind, it's subjective. Behavior, it's objective. I repeat once more. Mental diseases, it's a disease like a schizophrenia, like depressions, like anxiety disorders. It's a diseases in which patient has a serious problems in behavior. It's a disease in which patient has a serious problems in behavior and mental process, because behavior has a background like a mental process without somatic pathology. From therapeutics, from the general practitioner point of view, patient has a absolutely perfect health. Patient has a perfect health, but he has a problems in behavior, and problems in behavior usual in different dimensions, in social dimensions, in work dimensions, in job dimensions, in interpersonal relations, everything. Usual mental diseases, main problems in mental diseases, it's a destroy patient behavior, and as a result, patient has a kind of inability. Clear? Patient which has mental diseases has a very high level of the handicap. Why handicap? Because patients cannot use society. Patient cannot use environment. Clear? It's what does mean inability? It means patients cannot use environment around ourselves. He cannot survive in the environment. It's a mental diseases. It's a mental problem. Okay, I hope everybody understands. I repeat once more. Mental diseases, it's a problems in behavior. It's a problems in mental process without morphological and metabolic disturbance. Our clinical examinations don't show connections between problems in behavior and somatic or metabolic process. Mental process depend our behavior. Okay. Clinical examinations is required before describing of the mental status. Mental status examinations we do only after clinical examinations. I repeat once more, psychiatrist and psychotherapeutist, it's a doctor. If you're a doctor, you are GP doctor, you're a general practitioner doctor. If you're general practitioner doctor, your first aims, your first target, it's a clinical examination. We never think about disturbance of mental process like a mental diseases. We every time think about clinical examinations, about organic mental diseases. If we cannot recognize connections between clinical examinations and problems in behavior, we jumping to the mental state examinations, because in mental state examinations we must recognize diseases. And you remember we have two types of diseases: organic diseases and mental diseases. If you have connections between problems in behavior and metabolic or morphological process, it's organic diseases. Usual organic disease is the responsibility of the neurologist, doctor, or other occupations. If you cannot recognize any somatic background which can influence to the behavior, we think about mental disease. Mental disease is like a mood disorders, like a bipolar disorders, like a major depressive disorders, like I don't know, like anxiety disorders, obsessive compulsive disorders. It's a diseases which has very strong problems in behavior without any changes in general medical without changing of the general medical conditions. Okay, what we need to recognize during mental state examinations? What has been mental state examinations? Mental state examinations, it's a process in which we recognize problems in behavior. It's a process. It's a examinations in which we recognize problems in behavior, in which we recognize problems in mental process, clear. And mental state examinations, yes, of course, mental state examinations we use for recognize psychological problems, but we every time must connect psychological problems and somatic problems, because we are doctor, and doctor, it's a clinical examinations, clear. Our first step, it's a clinical examinations. We every time must think about connections between body and psychology. Okay, what feature we need to recognize? First, it's a speech. We start interview, clear. Our examinations, it's an interview. What we must recognize in interview? Pressure of speech, very talkative. Poverty of speech, monotonous speech, and etc. Speech, content of speech, clear. We recognize mental process, we recognize patient thinking, we interview, we prepare questions, we wait answer. And very important, in mental state examinations, main tools which we use, it's a doctor. Doctor is a main device which we used for in mental state examinations, clear. Your device, when you are psychiatrist, your device which recognize problems. And what's important, we must speak about a gold standard. What does mean gold standard? Gold standard, it's mean 10 doctors examine 1 patient, and 10 doctor has same conclusions about what symptoms has a patient. It's called a gold standard, clear. Like everybody recognize same symptoms in same patients. Different doctor recognize same symptoms in same patients. It means then doctor has a very high background. Second, after speech, after content of speech, after style of speech, we recognize patient's appearance. It's very important. If patients support of an appearance, it's maybe not a depression, it's maybe not a schizophrenia. If patient not support himself, it's maybe problems with mood, it's maybe problems with willpower, it's maybe problems in cognitions when patients cannot live alone. Next, we must recognize feature of behavior like psychomotor retardations or psychomotor excitations. Patients with retardations, it's maybe depressions, it's maybe apathy, it's maybe problems with willpower, maybe due schizophrenia, due schizoaffective disorders, maybe due mood, maybe due depressions in major depressive disorders, maybe depressions due bipolar disorders. Perceptions disorders. Main problems in perception disorders in psychiatry and in medicine, it's hallucinations. We will discuss what this means. Hallucinations, it's a register of the perception image without real signal. After that, we must describe mood. We describe mood here. We are looking glass of behavior. We are looking glass of behavior. We are looking glass of speech. We are looking glass of the like a body language. Mood disorders, maybe what's main mood disorders? It's a depressions. It's maybe depressions. It's maybe mania. It's maybe anxiety disorders, because anxiety, it's a maybe anxiety not so good example. Yes, it's the main problems in mania. It's a euphoria. It's a mania. It's a depressions. It's maybe flatness effect. What does mean flatness effect? It's mean a patient have not changing of the mood during the time. Next, thought disorders. Thought disorders and memory functions. Thought disorders, it has a very strong connections with cognitions. What's problems in cognitions? What has been cognitions? Cognitions, it's our ability to integrate everything in one. It's our ability to integrate environment in the one network. For example, when you understand connections between your current educations and your medical license, it's a cognitions. When you understand what does it mean deposit in the bank, what does it mean credit in the bank, it's a cognitions. If you understand connections between your credit in bank and your future, it's a cognitions. If you understand if you can integrate, apply your knowledge which you receive in psychiatric class and psychology class in your interpersonal relations, it's a cognitions. Clear? Cognitions, it's a ability to connect different event in the one networks. Cognitions, when we understand different event and organize all event in the very completely picture. Cognitions, it's a top. Cognitions has a process which depends on cognitions. It's a thinking, it's a memory. Yes, of course, it's emotions, because emotions, what does it mean emotions? Emotions, it's a value. It's a value which depend important or not so important event or object for ourselves. If object very important for ourselves, very value high. What does it mean, this value? This value means how many pleasure or how many negative emotions when we feel during frustrations or during satisfactions. Satisfactions, it's a positive emotions when it's a level of value. It's like a transferring. It's a convert value in the pleasure emotions due satisfaction. What does it mean negative? What does it mean value due frustrations? What does it mean frustrations? It's a opposite from frustrations. It's a opposite from satisfactions. For example, you want 5 marks, but you receive 3 or 2 marks in exam. It means you frustrate your 5 marks. You want, for example, do something and you cannot do something. It's mean you frustrate some kind of activity. Clear? And due frustrations, you feel negative emotions. Due satisfaction, you feel positive emotions. Value. It's a level of negative emotions or value of positive emotions which you feel due satisfactions or due frustrations. Orientations. Time, place, and situations. Orientations, it's a parameter of consciousness. If patient has a clear consciousness, patient has orientations in time, place, personality, and maybe place. Da. And what's main problems, what's main symptoms which has a patient with pathology of consciousness? It's confusions. But confusions mean disorientations. Patient don't understand what's happening around him. It's mean words like a destroy. He cannot connect different parts of the word in the same picture. Consciousness, it's a top. Before consciousness present cognitions, before cognitions present thinking and memory. What we do in clinical examinations? In clinical examinations, we recognize symptoms which can influence to the behavior and mental process. For example, thyroid hormone, glucocorticoids, progesterone, cortisol, insulin. These hormones can increase level activity, can decrease activity. Clear? For example, if patient has a bad mood and a long time and he has a high level of the progesterone, low level of the thyroid hormone, high level of the cortisol, we speak about not about depression. It's not a major depressive disorders. It's a bad mood, it's a depressions due general medical conditions. And our treatment, it's a treatment of the main diseases. It's a increasing level of the thyroid, it's a decreasing level of the glucocorticoid, decreasing level of the progesterone, decreased level of the cortisol. But sometimes cortisol, for example, possible something increasing due distress. Так, now I want to explain what it means stress and distress. What does it mean stress? Stress, it's a changings. Stress, it's a changings in the environment. And when something changing around yourself, we start reply like a fight or flight. It's a stress. We immobilize our body to the fight or flight, and we mobilize our power. We mobilize our body, and as a result, we do these mobilizations. We we resolve problems. If we resolve problems, it's a stress resolving. It's a Eurostress. It's very good. But when something change in environment and we cannot resolve these problems, it's a distress. Distress, it's inadaptations. It's inadaptations which persist a long time. Yes, of course, it's a developing negative emotions. Clear? Because what does mean negative emotions? It's a distress. It's a distress. We want something, but we cannot receive something. When we cannot receive something, we feel negative emotions. When we receive something, we feel positive emotions. When we resolve problems, we feel positive emotions. When we cannot resolve problems, we every time feel negative emotions. And yes, of course, it's like a main background of the psychological treatment. We need to resolve stress. We need to resolve negative. We need to resolve distress, because distress, it's a problems in environment without positive exit. Okay, cardiovascular disorders and lung pathology, CNS disorders, chronic pain conditions, dramatically influence to the mental state conditions. And if patient has a chronic pain and bad mood, usually it's not a depression. It's a depressive syndromes. It's a depressions due general medical conditions. I hope you understand. In clinical examinations, we must recognize factors which can influence to the patient behavior and mental process. Usually it's endocrine systems. Usually it's a cardiovascular systems. Usually it's a lung. It's a chronic pain conditions. And yes, of course, CNS diseases very often accompany with pathology in in pathology in behavior. Okay, in mental state examinations, doctors do conclusions about mental process via patient's behavior. Behavior is subjective. Mental process is subjective for doctors and objective for patients. I hope now you understand what does mean mental state examinations. Mental state examinations, it's a process in which doctors do conclusions about mental process of the patients. And we do these conclusions via looking glass of the patient's behavior. But you every time must remember that behavior is objective and mental process is subjective. Now I repeat once more. What does mean mental disorders? It's a disorders of behavior or mental process, thinking, perceptions, emotions, memory that has arisen without visible morphological or metabolic pathologies. Okay, now you understand. In up-to-date level of technology, we cannot create connection between general medical conditions and behavior. If link between general medical conditions and behavior absent, it's a mental disorders. If present connections between clinical examinations and behavior, it's organic diseases. It's organic disease. Okay. Okay, I hope now everybody understand. For example, patient has a bad mood long time, or we do clinical examinations, but in clinical examinations we cannot recognize anything. We don't recognize anything. Patient has a perfect health, all analysis positive. Drugs and illegal drugs absent in blood. What does it mean? It means mental disorders. Patient has a problems with perceptions. Patients feel hallucinations. Patients reduce something which absent in environment. We do clinical examinations. Trauma absent. Morphology of the brain perfectly. Intoxications absent. It's a mental disorders. It's a psychosis. It's a patient has a mental disorders. Okay, as example, patient has hallucinations and we recognize a LSD in the patient blood. Yes, of course, it's not a mental disorders. It's a psychotic patient. It's a psychosis. It's a psychotic symptoms. It's a psychosis due intoxications. Clear? Now we will discuss about psychopathology. What is psychopathology? Psychopathology is a base of psychiatry. Psychopathology is the systematic study of the abnormal experience, cognitions, and behaviors. The study of the products of the disordered mind. I pay attention. It's not a study of the disturbance in brain. It's a study disturbance in mind. And yes, of course, when we speak about psychopathology, usually it's a subjective, because we every time speak about pathology of mind. Mind, it's a subjective. Mind objective for yourself, all your feelings, it's a objective for you. But I don't know your ideas. I cannot see in your mind. Mind telescopic rooms absent in the hospital. Remember, in the hospital present only device when visualize brain. We cannot register brain pathology. It's an objective. But mind pathology is a subjective. And how we recognize mind pathology? We recognize pathology of mind via a looking glass of the patient's behavior. Okay, I repeat once more. Psychopathology is a systematic study of the abnormal experience, cognitions, and behaviors. The study of the product of the disordered mind, not a brain, mind. It's a study, systematic study about mind pathology. Directions in the psychopathology. In general, we have two directions. It's a descriptive and explanatory. Usually in psychiatry, we use descriptive point of view. What does mean descriptive point of view? We categorize and do a phenomenology. For example, we only register patient has very talkative, patients very feel some image which absent in reality. Patient, for example, has a lack of cognitive activity. We only register, we don't explain why it's happy. And explanatory, for example, patient has a bad mood. While patient has a bad mood, we cannot recognize any general medical conditions which can develop in a bad mood. And we think patient has a bad mood because he has a lot of psychological trauma before, and he cannot, he very close, he cannot show open emotions. Maybe all negative emotions living in his unconsciousness and disturb patients. It's a psychoanalytic point of view. Behavioristical point of view. We think then only environment depend our behavior. Why patient has a bad mood? Patient has a bad mood because in environment he has a lot of restrictions. Clear? We try explain why it's happy, but we explain why it's happy without objective. We only manipulate with subjective, like psychological trauma. You don't know present or absent psychological trauma because patient said, okay, my childhood period was very traumatic, but we don't know what has been traumatic for patients. Okay, descriptivity, we only register. Doctor in gold standard must register pathology in behavior and interpret some pathology in mental area, like a mood pathology, like a perception pathology, and like these things. Now I hope you understand. Explanatory, we try explain mental process and connect different mental process in one chain. Descriptive psychopathology, we only recognize type of behavior, we recognize type of mental process, and do categorizations and register and organize symptoms in syndromes in diseases. Okay, I hope you understand this picture. Descriptive psychopathology. It can be said that descriptive psychopathology is a fundamental professional skills of the psychiatrist. It's possible that only diagnostic skills unique of the psychiatrist. Now you understand, descriptive psychopathology, it's a main skills in psychiatry. You must very clear understand every symptoms. You must interpret every symptoms via looking glass of patient behavior. You must be remember definitions of every symptoms and syndromes and apply these definitions to patient behavior. And very important, everybody must take a same conclusions for same patients. Different doctor, same conclusions about same patients. I hope now you understand what does it mean descriptive psychopathology and what does it mean gold standard. Avoid the theoretical explanations. What does it mean descriptive psychopathology? We don't explain why the symptoms present. It's not so interesting for ourselves. For ourselves, only interesting. Patient has depressions. You must recognize depressions, and your colleagues must recognize depressions. And other colleagues, and everybody recognize depressive syndromes in same patients. We have not mentaloscopy. Maybe patients it's an actor and he play in the depressions. But good doctors has more knowledge in area of psychopathology, and usual patient do some mistakes and present some incompatibility between behavior and psychological process. Simulations of the mental diseases very difficult, but possible. Clear? Okay, now you understand. We must recognize everybody, different doctors must recognize same pathology without explain why a patient has a bad mood. It's not interesting. Interesting bad mood, interesting delusions, interesting hallucinations. And we organize group of symptoms in syndromes in the diseases. Next definitions. Yes, what has been descriptive psychopathology? It's a descriptive form of other forms of the psychopathology explanations of the phenomena that it's described. Clear? For ourselves, very interesting categorizations. We split all behavior to the some parts, and every part we describe. And as a result, we has symptoms and syndromes. But what's phenomena? If usual general practitioner doctor use additional examinations like a blood analysis, like MRI, CT, X-ray, we use only our mentality, we use only our feelings, our mind for recognize pathology in patients. Now we speak about what does it mean syndromes and symptoms. Symptoms, it's some feature in behavior and mental process. What does mean syndromes? Syndromes, it's a stable set of the symptoms united by single pathogenetic mechanism. I pay your attention. We try organize everything in the syndromes. But when we organize something in the syndromes, we use explanatory psychopathology. Yes, of course, psychiatry it's not a very logical science sometimes. For example, patient has a bad mood, and as a result, patient has a lack of activity. And why patient has a lack of activity? Because he don't feel satisfactions after when he satisfy our motivations, and as a result he has a lack of activity because activity, why we has activity, we need activity for developing a positive emotions. When we satisfy our motivations, we feel positive emotions. Clear? We feel positive emotions when we satisfy our motivations. Without satisfactions, we don't feel positive emotions. But if positive emotions and satisfactions, it's a synonyms. Absent positive emotions, absent satisfactions. Absent satisfactions, absent activity. Because our target of our life, it's a positive emotions. Target of our life, it's a positive emotions. Okay, if we organize in up-to-date psychiatry, much more often we speak about diagnostic criteria. What does mean diagnostic criteria? Diagnostic criteria is a set of symptoms without signal pathogenetic mechanism. Clear? Diagnostic criteria is a stable set of the symptoms without united by signal pathogenetic mechanism. For example, patient, we only, it's a checklist. It's a checklist without same roots. It's a checklist. And now it's much more popular in up-to-date psychiatry. Okay, in psychiatry, usually we split all human, say so, psychology, mind to the some part. What's the main part of our mind? It's a sensory area, it's a perception area, it's an area of our emotions, it's a willpower area, it's an area of our thinking and cognitive process, it's our personality, and it's our consciousness. Clear? And yes, of course, very important things, it's real words. You remember, reality it's something which reality it's something, it's activity of our sensory cortex. Reality it's activity of receptors and reflections of receptors in our sensory cortex. Yes, it's very important. First, we must check when we examine patients. We must check sensations. Sensations we check during neurological examinations. After that, we must check perception process. Perceptions, it's a cognitive process when we include our former experience and skills and our sensory image. We describe sensory image like nature and locations, like a red apple. Apple, it's a fruit, and apple, it's something which we can eating. Yes, of course, perception possible without sensory image. For example, you can close your eyes and dreaming about apple. Now apple present in your mind like a perception image, apple present in your short-term memory, but in sensory fields absent, apple absent. I pay your attention. Like this mechanism, it's abstract thinking possible only for peoples. Animals cannot manipulate with image which absent in the sensory fields. Clear? Sensory fields, it's everything which achieving for your sense organs. And sensory fields very clear. Sensory fields parameter of image very clear, and we can every time receive additional informations. Perception fields. Perception fields, it's a finger step of the former sensory image, but perception fields, it's some image which you generate due own thinking, due own cognitive activity. For example, you can create a own point of view about apple. You can create own opinion about apple. It's a perception image too. Clear? And in perception fields, we can manipulate which image which present in sensory fields and compare with image which not present in the sensory fields. Animals can compare only two objects which present in the sensory fields, but we can compare image which present in sensory fields, which image which we see sometimes ago. It's abstract thinking. Clear? We can compare, we can combine image which present here and we meet sometimes ago. Okay, emotions. Emotion disorders, it's two main expression. Depressions. Depressions, it's a situation when patients every time negative emotions, more than 2 weeks. Mania. Mania, it's conditions when patients can feel only positive emotions and cannot feel negative emotions more than 5 days. Willpower problems. Willpower problems, it's apathy. What does mean willpower? Willpower, it's energy which push ourselves to do something. For example, you wake up in the morning and for example, I don't know, you and visit a lecture today. It's a willpower. Clear? Willpower like start our behavior. Clear? And for what purpose we have behavior or activity? Because we need satisfactions. Because target of the behavior it's a satisfactions. Target of behavior it's accommodate our satisfy our motivations. Thinking process, it's a thinking process, it's a formal and content. We will discuss all of this. Formal disorders of thought, it's like symbolic thinking, like illogic thinking, it's like paralogic thinking, and content, it's delusions. Personality disorders. Personality, it's what does mean personality? It's an interface, it's a stable pattern of behavior which stable during the time and situations, and different time and situations, and unique from one person to other person. And what does mean personality disorders? Problems in this interface. For example, patients every time has a one style of behavior in different situations, and as a result this pattern of behavior correctly only in one situation. In all other situations behavior not so correctly, and as a result patient has problems in adaptations in environment. Maybe he adapted for living in special school, but he cannot live in normal society with parents, with other person. Okay, consciousness disorders. It's a stupor, coma, and delirium. Okay, I repeat once more. During the mental state examinations, we describe sensory area like anesthesia, paresthesia, hyperesthesia, perception disorders like hallucinations, illusions, emotion disorders like mania, like depressions. I pay your attention. Depression, it's a bad mood. Majority time during the day, more than 2 weeks. Mania, it's situations when patients feel negative emotion or very positive emotions more than 5 days. In depressions, patients cannot feel negative emotions. In mania, patients cannot feel. In depressions, patients cannot feel positive emotions. In mania, patients cannot feel negative emotions. And all conclusions in mania have background. I can do everything because negative opinion absent. In depressions, opposite. Willpower problems, it's apathy. Apathy, it's a conditions when patients has maybe correct feelings, but lack of activity because absent energy to start activity. Thinking disorders, it's a formal disorders, it's like delusions, hallucinations in content, and paralogic thinking and symbolic thinking in formal disorders of thought. Personality disorders, it's a group of disorders when patient has incorrect behavior and other area of mental process work perfectly. Consciousness usual, it's not a psychiatrist problems. Consciousness usual problems, it's a due general medical conditions. It's super coma delirium. Okay, thank you very much for your attention. Thank you very much for your attendance. I am Alexander Dvirsky. For today, enough. Так, now I recognize how many students present in the lecture. Just a moment. Okay, only 8 students. Not so many students. It's not so good. Today our lecture about sensory processing, sensations and perception process. I am Professor Alexander Dvirsky, Psychiatry and Psychology Department. Introductions. Now we learn psychology, and you remember psychology is a science about behavior and mental process. Behavior and mental process, it's a two main category which we use in psychology. Behavior, it's an objective, and mental process is a subjective. Behavior objective for examiner, and mental process subjective for examiners, and objective for person which feel this mental process. What does mean mental process? Mental process is something like emotions, thinking, when you remember about something, dreaming about something. It's a mental process. Mental process, it's like an internal mechanic of our brain which create behavior. And what does mean behavior? Behavior, it's something which influence to environment. Behavior, it's our reply to the external influence. Behavior, it's a reply to the internal influence. What does mean internal influence? For example, pain. For example, hunger, thirsty feelings. Everything's modify our behavior. Due modification of behavior, we try to survive in the environment. In general, main target of our nerve systems is create behavior. But for what purpose we need behavior? We need behavior because we need surviving into the environment. And our behavior not exist in the vacuum. Because our behavior is a result of a lot of mental process. We have a lot of difficult mental process, which after some times we register like a behavior. Behavior, it's a result. Clear? It's a result. Mental process, it's like an engine in car. Okay. What factors influence to our behavior? It's a mental process. It's a process which happen in reality, in the physical world. And what internal process? It's clear. It's our brain feels what's happy with him. But what touch about reality? And informations about reality and informations about physiological process which persist in our body, which happen in our body. We register via sensations and perception process. Clear? Our sensations and perceptions process, it's a bridge between real worlds and it's a bridge between mental process and real worlds. Yes, of course, perceptions and sensations, it's a mental process, but this mental process has serious connections with reality, because it's something which reflects reality in our nerve systems. Sensory processing divided to the two classes. It's first, it's two type. It's sensations and perceptions. But in everyday English, yes, of course, we use terms perceptions. But you must remember that perceptions, it's only one stage of the sensory processing. Persist more simple stage which has named sensations. Perceptions, it's a more difficult stage which include our cognitive ability. Sensations. What does mean sensations? Sensations are detections of the elementary properties of stimulus, such as brightness, colors, warmth, and sweetness, maybe surface, landscape surface, and something like this. Now I try to explain for you what does it mean sensations. Sensations, it's a stream of data into the CNS, in the central nerve systems. Sensations, it's only data. It's like it's electricity in the cable. Clear? For example, you has I don't know, you has a cable with internet which attaching to your routers. It's a sensations. Clear? Because it's electricity impulses which create informations, which has informations. And when you open web page, when you see webinar, it's like a content. It's like a content in your consciousness. It's like a content. It's like a perceptions, because you understand what does it mean, those impulses. Clear? I repeat once more. Sensations, it's a detection elementary properties of signals. Sensations, it's like a kind of activity, special area of the brain which responsibility for the some sensory channel, for the some modality. Now I use terms modality. What does it mean modality? Visual modality, auditory modality, tactility modality, olfactory modality, gustatory modality. Clear? Different modalities mean different sensory channel. Yes, of course, different sensory channel, it's a different energy. But in the brain, in the nerve systems, informations, it's only impulses. Impulses in the nerve systems has a same electricity parameters, same voltage, and very same ratio. Clear? It's mean light and sound after contact with receptors transferring to the impulses. Impulses which generate sound and impulses which generate eyes has a very same parameter, same electricity parameter, same ratio, same voltage. But what's different? Eyes and ears are touching to the different area of brain, and sensations in the last stage, it's a activity of the sensory cortex. When sensory cortex is active, we think that we listen sound. If visual cortex in the occipital lobe is active, we feel that we see some picture, we see some image. Clear? Okay, I pay your attention once more. Word absent. Present only reflections of the word in our brain, and our mind create a picture, create connections about words. Clear? Word, because what does it mean? Light. Light, it's the electromagnetic wave. Yes, it's electromagnetic wave, and length of wave, it's near the 300 100 nanometers till 400 nanometers, maybe something like this, maybe something. Maybe I do some mistakes, but dig it very same. And what does it mean, FM radio? FM radio is electromagnetic wave with length of wave near the 75 centimeters, near the 1 meter, clear. But you register the wave which has a nanometers like a length of wave, like a light, but you don't listen FM radio. What does it mean, smartphone? What does it mean, GSM networks? GSM networks, electromagnetic wave, which has a length of wave near the less than 70 centimeters, less than 17 centimeters, maybe 50 centimeters. And but you don't listen, you don't feel when somebody is speaking earphone, you don't register this electromagnetic wave. Why it's happy? Answer very easy. Receptors has a special parameter. Every receptor has like internal properties, register a special area, special like diapason, special range, yes, special range of physical energy. And after that, receptors send information to the brain, and brain activates special area. And in the last stage, sensations, it's activity of the special area of brain. It's tactility, it's here, sound here, visual here, clear. Different area of brain, different modality. In general, what's different between light and sound? Light here in the occipital lobe, and sound in the temporal lobe. I hope you understand information. Our sensory feelings, it's only activity of the special area of cortex. Something which happen in the subcortical structure, it's not reflect in our consciousness, and as a result we don't know those processes. I mean, if you know something in your consciousness, you remember these things for future. Perceptions. What does mean perceptions? The detections of the more complex properties of stimulus, including its locations and nature, involving learning. Now think about these definitions. What's different between perceptions and sensations? First, detections, complex properties of stimulus. Very happy perceptions. Perceptions happy in the CNS, in the brain, clear. Sensations happy in receptors, passing via the nerves from receptors in organs, in surface of body to the CNS. Perceptions, total, it's happy only in the CNS, clear. It's activity of the brain. And complex properties of signal. Complex property including location and nature. Nature, it's mean for what purpose you can use. It's a cognitions. You understand? Now I use a very difficult terms, cognitions. What does it mean, cognitions? Cognitions, it's a your ability. Cognitions, it's a your ability create a completely picture of the world. For example, why you visit lecture? You visit lecture because you must pass a license exam in home after 6 years. Clear. Your target, medical license. Your target, salary in clinic. It's understandable target for you. You want salary. You want do like social elevations. Yes, social promotions. And how to receive license? For receive license, you must pass a license exam when you come back in India. And yes, of course, now you prepare to this exam. I repeat once more. Now you not learn because you must receive marks in university. It's a mistake. Your large target, it's an Indian exam. It's an Indian exam. Next. Next definitions. Learning. Learning persists in these definitions. Yes, now I'm sorry I don't touch next part. Now we discuss about first part of definitions. Nature. Nature, it's mean you use your experience about words. Clear? You use your experience about words. You understand what does it mean words around you. You do some operations. It looks like it's possible use for, and you use these operations for compare signal, for recognizing signal. It's a cognitive operations. Clear? You use your former experience and skills for recognizing image. Image, it's like a finger step of picture without means. What does mean image? It's a photo without label. If you put label, it's perceptions. Clear? Perceptions, it's a photo with label, because you know where it's happy, who present in this photo, like more information. Next part of definitions, pay your attention about unconsciousness. What's different between consciousness and unconsciousness? If you understand something, it's a consciousness. For example, if you think about me, you understand me, I am in your consciousness. Consciousness, it's a level of your responsibility. Consciousness, it's a level of your awareness. We has a special level of consciousness. But remember, if you understand something, if your responsibility for something, it's mean object in consciousness. Consciousness, it's a internal model of the external worlds. And perceptions, it's reflections of the reality. You understand what's different between model and reflections. Reflections, it's like your reflect picture. You cannot change. You has a restricted ability to the change picture in mirrors. How to change picture in mirrors? Okay, use a color mirror. Yes, maybe something change a shape of mirror possible, but this changing is not dramatically. What does it mean model? Model, it's like a computer games. In computer games, you can take special properties for every unit, for every avatars, and every unit has own life, and it's our consciousness. In consciousness, we has a model. In consciousness, our model, we can play in future. Clear? In consciousness, we can play in future. In consciousness, it's a sandbox, because we can play in future. We can living future situations without contact with reality. Clear? Unconsciousness part of perceptions. When you play in the football, when you play in the some sport games, you don't think how to do something. You see ball and you reply to the ball when ball near you. You do this automatically, but you're learning these motions. You're learning this. Yes, why? Because you has a lot of exercise. You do a lot of exercise, and you visit sport class and repeat one exercise, and after some times these motions jumping from consciousness to unconsciousness. It's like drive bicycles or drive scooters in the street. Sometimes you every time repeat drive rules, and after some times you use drive rules without understanding automatically. Why? Because knowledge from your consciousness level pushing to your unconsciousness level. You do some operations automatically. These operations in general difficult, but not so difficult. For do new difficult operations, you must do it in consciousness, because consciousness is a place in which we do difficult operations. Consciousness increase do our behavior much more difficult. Okay, now you understand. Then perceptions, it's a special problems process which recognize properties, complex properties of signal. It's a cognitive process. During perceptions, we reflect reality. During perceptions, we recognize what image we meet in the reality. In general, we like a label image. Image, it's mean like some photo without descriptions. If you put descriptions, it's an image. sensation and perceptions, how it understands perceptions and sensations. For example, red ball, it's a red ball, you don't understand for what purpose. But when you recognize in this ball apple, you understand it's an apple, it's a perceptions. You recognize nature, locations, and properties of signal. If it's an apple, you can eat it. Now we discuss about stage of the sensory processing. Sensory processing consists of some stage. Signal in the receptors has a first process which has named transductions. Transductions happen into receptors. After that, next stage, it's a temporal coding. Temporal coding happen into the receptors. After that, we have the nerves which connect receptors and CNS. Signal pass into the brain, and into the brain signal coding in the systems which has name anatomical coding. Now I explain this stage more exactly, more detail. Take a more detail in picture. Okay, transductions. What does it mean, transductions? The conversions of the physical stimuli into the changes in the activity of the receptor cells of the sensory organs. Okay, what does mean transductions? When energy contact with cells and cells change electricity parameter, these cells has name a receptors. Receptors is something which generate signals which sending to the nerve systems due influence from some stimul. Stimul may be external, may be internal. Internal, but it's external. Why? Because changing level of the carbon dioxide in your blood. It's an external signal for receptors. Receptors change some physical changings, reduce some physical changings into the environment around himself. Clear? For receptors, word it's a surrounding. Word it's a surrounding for receptors. Okay, what do transductions? Transductions transfer impulses into the physical energy. What physical energy now I discuss? I discuss about impulses. I discuss about electricity impulses which generate receptors, and receptors usually it's a distant part of the axon. When receptors change state, he generate impulses in these neurons and send impulses. What does it mean, impulses? Impulses, it's a ratio, it's a wave. It's a wave which has parameter length and has parameter voltage. Voltage and ratio parameter. And after that, the signal trip to the more high area of the nerve systems, clear, to the other area of nerve systems. Okay, transductions. I repeat once more, what does it mean, transductions? Transductions, it's a process which happen into the receptors and change activity of the receptor due the influence to these receptors. It may be change of the transductions, it's a process which change activity of the receptors due influence to the receptor specific energy. Transductions transfer one type of energy to the other type of energy. Clear? Transductions, it's a process in which change one part of energy to other part of energy. For example, electromagnetic wave, like light transferred to the nerves impulses, and very important understand, we like transfer all kind of energy from the surrounding to the activity of the neurons, clear. In electricity, mechanical wave, like a sound, like a vibrations, we transfer to the activity of the cells, and this process has name transduction. What type of energy we can register? Different energy we can register. Our body can register a lot of type of energy. First, it's a light, it's a radiant electromagnetic wave. Ear, it's a sound, it's a mechanical energy. Vestibular systems control positions our body in the environment. It's a mechanical energy. Tongue and nose recognize a shape of molecule. You understand, smell of coffee and taste of coffee different, but why it's happy? Because taste, it's one area of brain, smell, it's the other area of brain. We register same molecular, but we recognize this molecular like different things, because taste and smell different. Skin and internal organs, we register mechanical energy, temperature, vibrations. Pain, it's special reactions, it's a special receptors which control chemical environment around himself. Muscles register stretchings, it's a mechanical energy. Now you understand a lot of energy which we conversations to the neural impulses. After transductions, all kind of energy, it's impulses into the nerve systems, electromagnetic electricity impulses. Next stage, it's a temporal coding. What does mean temporal coding? Special kind of signal coding, like a special rate. I pay your attention. For example, your temperature, like very hot, it's 5 hertz, very cold, it's 2 hertz. Clear? Different ratio for different properties of signal. Now some words about anatomical coding. What does mean anatomical coding? Anatomical coding, it's a different area of brain register different modality. What does mean modality? From an anatomical point of view, modality, it's a sensory channel, but sensory channel in our brain. Everything which happy in our visual cortex into the occipital lobe, it's a picture. Everything which happy in our temporal lobe, it's a sound. Everything which we touch and feel via our skin and tongue and nose, it's a presential gyrus. It's a presential gyrus. And what does it mean signal? What does it mean some signal? Some signal, it's activity about a very small piece of the cortex. Clear? And when present activity of sensory cortex, it's reflect in our consciousness. It's reflecting our consciousness like a signal. Clear? Now you understand that word absent, present only activity of the cortex, present only activity of the cortex in our brain. This activity depend everything. Its activity depend and create words. In general, we can live without external signal. When we understand how to stimulate cortex, we inject electrodes and we create reality via computer. Computer be generate special impulses into the special area of brain, and person be feel real world around himself. Now we think about our morning coffee. What does it mean, our morning coffee? It's a coffee machine. What does it mean, coffee machine for ourselves? It's a reflections of the radiant energy. Coffee machine reflect light, and we register this electromagnetic energy in our eyes. Our retina switch on activity and generate impulses. These impulses, electromagnetic impulses, I pay you attention, we receive radiant energy with length of wave like 300, 400 nanometers, and we sending this informations into the more high area of nerve systems we like impulses, and this stage, it's a perception stage, it's a transduction stage, when receptors generate a special pattern of impulses for special color, for special part of the coffee machine. It's a temporal coding. Temporal coding happy into the receptors. Next stage, it's impulses passes to the brain. For example, when we hearing, smell, it's a temporal lobe. When we see coffee machine, it's a occipital lobe. When we feel smell of coffee, it's a olfactory area of the brain. Yes, it's a it's a deep area of brain which registers the olfactory feelings. And coffee machine, it's only activity of the receptor of the neurons into the occipital, temporal, and olfactory area of brain. I hope now you understand. Reality absent. Same point of view, yes. Transductions and temporal lobes happy into the receptors, and sense organs register energy and generate impulses. Properties of impulse, generating impulses from the stimulus, it's the transductions, generating special pattern of impulses due special properties of signal, it's a temporal coding, it's happy into the receptors. After that, in the CNS, happy anatomical coding. Everything which happy into the occipital cortex, it's a visual picture. Everything which happy into the temporal lobes, it's a sound. Everything which happy in olfactory area of brain, it's a smell of coffee. I hope now you understand sensations and perception process. When we recognize coffee machine, it's a perceptions, clear. Sensations, it's only activity of the brain. When we recognize coffee machine like a coffee machine, it's a perception, because you understand nature and location of impulses. Thank you very much for your